The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 101. Sweet and sour. Sui Zhou didn't turn his head, so who knew if he had heard. His figure vanished into the mist like a shooting star. A short moment later, a muffled sound came from in front. The array around Wang Zhi and Wei Mao subsequently stagnated. Wang Zhi zeroed in on the opportunity, shouting, "Go!" Wei Mao's psyche had been tense this whole time, prepared to be on the go at any time. Nearly the second Wang Zhi spoke, he promptly charged in the direction Sui Zhou had broken through from. At some unknown time, the sound of fighting all around them gradually vanished. Hair-raisingly, the underworld soldiers half hidden in the wind and sand also subsequently vanished. The dark night was replaced by a touch of white in the sky. Wang Zhi and Wei Mao abruptly noticed that despite the sandstorm still dancing like mad, without the array's cover, those infinite troops that confused the eyes had vanished into nothing, the enemy's situation gradually emerging. In a split second, they all realized that Tang Fan had found the distant stone formation and broken it. There were a total of 8 people surrounding Wang Zhi's group, arranged in accordance with the 8 trigrams: Qian, Kun, Zhen, Sun, Gan, Li, Zhen, Dui. Whenever their group tried to break free of the circle from a certain position, the 2 foes to the left and right of said position would join forces to help the middle person attack them, and if one was killed, a new person positioned outside would come up to fill in for them. This unending, multiplying cycle of come and go combined with the former chaos of the underworld soldiers and cover of the sandstorm had thus created a flawless array, rigidly trapping Wang Zhi and Wei Mao inside the encirclement. However, their foes did not have unlimited number people to kill, and Wang Zhi's group were not pacifists. With a whole night's worth of effort, the enemy now had exactly 8 members remaining, no new blood to restock from the outside. Sui Zhou had just determined a position from a voice. The direction he was attacking in was one of the links in the 8-person formation, Li Zilong. That the latter would actually show up to participate in the attack in person meant that they had indeed killed most of their followers. Thinking of all that, Wang Zhi's spirits were greatly lifted and he laughed as he pounced on someone beside Li Zilong. The man had been about to attack Sui Zhou while he wrangled with Li Zilong, only to be intercepted by Wang Zhi. Without the protection of those underworld soldiers, the White Lotus Society followers were no more than average people, just a little bit more skilled. Why would Wang Zhi and Wei Mao ever fear them? The 3 formed an offense-defense setup, beginning to fight in close quarters with the 8-person group headed by Li Zilong. The black night would be passing, and daybreak would be coming eventually. Alongside the appearance of that smear of white, the sky was getting brighter and brighter, the wind and sand that had been blowing all night finally beginning to slow their force. That was not good news, in the White Lotus Society's opinion. Wang Zhi's group was only 3, yet they could very well kill all 8 of them. Seeing yet another companion fall, the advantage of their side gradually waning, a follower gritted his teeth, then called to Li Zilong. "Second head, this can't go on. The Tartar army is about to attack. Are we really going to be able to capture him alive?" Currently, there was no longer an issue of alive capture, as the array had been broken and the other side's confidence had been greatly bolstered. If things continued like this, would they be able to retreat with their lives? Li Zilong realized at last that he had committed a strategic error. At the start, they could have simply killed Wang Zhi, but he had thought that a live Wang Zhi would be more valuable than a dead one, so he had persistently demanded that his subordinates capture him alive, even laying down an impenetrable trap to lead the others away from him as best as possible. Unexpectedly, Meng Kun had made a mistake on his end and failed in his task, giving Tang Fan's group the opportunity to flee, who then returned back to help. Now that the array was ruined, the chances of successfully capturing Wang Zhi was greatly reduced, and because they had been tied up with him on this side, they had lost their best chance to act. The combined martial forces of the other 3 could surprisingly match with all of them, or even turn the situation around. Once another Shishan passed, the Tartar army would go and attack. Were they to discover that the array's effect had failed and he hadn't captured Wang Zhi yet, they would certainly be furious with him, judging by their predator-like personalities. Bringing that to mind, Li Zilong inwardly clenched his jaw, hating Tang Fan to the bone all the more. Had it not been for him breaking the stone array, this situation wouldn't have come about tonight, to say nothing of the fact that the other had caused the death of his adopted son, Li Man. Another follower fell, leaving only 6 of the 8-person formation left, and of those 6, all were elite members that he had painstakingly cultured. The White Lotus Society, which had suffered a heavy blow, could no longer withstand any further losses. Retreat, he practically spat from between the cracks in his teeth. While the White Lotus Society people slowly gained the image of drawing back, Wang Zhi's group had also heard Li Zilong, and simply strengthened their offense intuitively. Each of them wielding a spring-gilt saber, leaving no cracks to leak out of, the images of blades harshly winding and weaving, the passive becoming the active. Their target was Li Zilong. From the demon fox case of the capital to the Weining Sealet of today, what was behind all of these suspenseful events was inseparable from the operations of the demonic priest before them. If they could catch him, the White Lotus Society would certainly consider it a heavy blow, and they might be able to use that chance to pull this batch of hideously dancing evildoers from its roots. Having thought as much, Sui Zhou and Wang Zhi thereby used all of their strength to make Li Zilong stay here. However, since Li Zilong had been able to slip out from under the nose of the emperor himself, even managing to complete switch with someone during his Keishikao execution using underhanded means, how could he not have a backup plan? He peered at Wang Zhi, Sui Zhou, and Wei Mao, huffed out a cold laugh, then quickly drew away from the battle. The 5 remaining followers fought with their opponents, while he blew on a loud and clear whistle. The cry of falcons was heard coming out of thin air. Large shadows promptly covered the 3 overhead. They all looked up to see 2 huge falcons dropping down from the sky, bearing down on them without warning. Were they to be pecked by those sharp, slightly curved beaks, that would be no joking matter, their flesh likely to come off with the scrape. They could no longer care about the followers, raising their sabers to resist the 2 falcons' surprise attack. Meanwhile, Li Zilong's group took this opportunity to flee. The huge birds were clearly well trained, their fighting abilities comparable to that of average experts. Due to the advantageous terrain of the open air, Sui Zhou and the rest inevitably became hindered in movement, only able to look on helplessly as Li Zilong led his team into vanishing from their lines of sight. After they left, the falcons had no love for fighting and immediately circled upwards, flying high into the sky, gradually shrinking into small black dots until no trace could be seen of them. In truth, even without the midway interruption by the falcons, they might not have been able to actually capture Li Zilong. As they were painfully aware of themselves, after a whole night of strenuous fighting, their physical strength was already reaching its limit. Sui Zhou was still fine, as he had at least had shelter from the rain in the cave and a short rest, but Wang Zhi and Wei Mao's conditions were awful. Getting any rest aside, they had been getting drenched and fighting for most of the night, and the latter half, they'd had to remain in rampant sandstorm without falling to a disadvantage. Their opponent's withdrawal, from another perspective, was a great aid to them, because after a little while more, they might not have been able to hold themselves up anymore. Sui Zhou was still capable of keeping himself upright using his saber, panting slightly, while Wang Zhi and Wei Mao sat right on the ground. Their whole bodies were injured all over, cutting indescribably sorry figures while their faces were covered in grime. It was likely that if Wang Zhi went back to the city now, no one would be able to recognize him. "We can't rest yet," a voice came from not far away. The 3 followed the sound to see Tang Fan and Du Gui supporting each other as they walked over. They, too, had new injuries, looking to have suffered quite a lot when they had broken the array, but as long as they were still alive, everything was going to be all right. Seeing that everyone was fine, they all relaxed. Sui Zhou's gaze on Tang Fan was even more focused, as if he wanted to confirm that he genuinely was without major injury. That burning look was practically about to gain substance, How could Mr. Tang not sense it? His handsome face lightly flushed. Pretending not to see, he repeated what he had just said. We can't rest yet, we need to rush back to the city and make a report. The Tartars will come to attack Datong soon, and Commandant Wang needs to be informed of that in advance. As a border city, Datong was always in a state of war preparations, but the enemy might be coming and the enemy is coming, right now were two different concepts. The more sufficiently prepared they were, the greater their chances of victory would be, and the fewer casualties would come. Wang Ji rolled his eyes. I can't walk. You lot will have to be the ones to go back. He really couldn't walk. That wasn't an act. His energy was depleted, his complexion was gray, and it looked like he was approaching his limit. The same went for Wei Mao beside him. Tang Fan shook his head. Ignoring his huffy words, he turned to Suizhou. Guangchuan, Lu Yan is still in the cave. The other immediately caught his meaning. I'll go get him. You all start walking, I'll see you in the city later. Tang Fan nodded. All right. Take care. Suizhou went back to find Lu Yan, and the other four went back to Datong on foot. From the thunder, lightning, wind, and rain last night, the horses they had rode in on had long since fled to parts unknown, leaving them to walk on their two legs. It was likely that before they would be able to get back, the Tartar cavalry would arrive. Out of a lack of choice, Wang Ji and Wei Mao led Tang Fan and Du Gui'er along, respectively, gathered up their energy, and ran back. Martial artists were ultimately not the same as ordinary folks, making their pace a lot quicker. If they exerted themselves, they might be able to get back to Datong before the Tartars. On his end, Suizhou had Lu Yan on his back, and also caught up pretty quickly. Wang Ji tightly clutched Tang Fan's arm, face ashen, unable to even speak, afraid that if he expended that energy, he wouldn't be able to get it back. The group traveled at various paces, then ultimately arrived at the outside of Datong City Ashishan after sunrise. Only to be barred outside the gate, disallowed from coming in. The reason was none other than that the six of them were coated in bloodstains and looked abhorrent. Even the lone woman, Du Gui'er, was no exception, being terrible to behold. The second he saw the gate-guarding soldier looking at all of them like they were bandits as he sized them up, the originally out-of-strength eunuch Wang instantly grew incensed. The hell are you looking at? I'm the defending supervisor of Datong, Wang Ji. What short-sighted fucker would dare to impersonate me? This blade of mine killed a lot of traitors last night, and if you dare to stop me, you'll be another one. Tang Fan placed his hand on his forehead. Didn't Wang Ji say that he had no strength? Where was he getting this energy now? As soon as the soldier heard the name Wang Ji, the look in his eyes immediately changed. Upon closer inspection, oh no, he really was eunuch Wang. It was simply that eunuch Wang was typically sharply dressed. When had he ever had such a bedraggled appearance? At this moment, the other didn't even dare to wipe off Wang Ji's spittle that had flown onto his face, hurriedly letting them in an ingratiating manner. After entering the city, Wang Ji still had to go report to Wang Yu, as only then could the order be passed down for the city to prepare for war. The rest of them brought Du Gui'er back home, having a doctor of Zhongjing Hall treat Lu Yan for his injuries while they were at it. The bandages from last night had been rushed, all of it done under pressure, and he needed better arrangements. Upon her return to Zhongjing Hall, Dr. Du held his head and wept bitterly at seeing his daughter's ragged state, naturally. Idle talk was not to be had here. Following a period of frantic activities, Lu Yan was left in Zhongjing Hall to recover. Tang Fan and Suizhou didn't remain for long in the hall after getting treated, instead planning to return to the post house to rest. Tang Fan was unbearably exhausted. As he was walking on his way back, his steps felt floaty, as if he was walking on clouds. All of a sudden, his foot stepped on nothing, and once he snapped out of it, he realized that he had since come to be carried on someone's back. He blinked. Guangchuan. Because he had reached the peak of exhaustion, he was forced to manually blink to avoid shutting his eyes. I feared you'd doze off while walking, said a calm voice from in front of him, the vibrations of his chest transferring to Tang Fan's arms. Put me down, you're injured too. I can still walk. Tang Fan smiled, gently patting his shoulder. Seeing a man carrying another man didn't attract curiosity from passers-by, as they merely took Tang Fan as having an injured foot. Master Tang, who hadn't been piggybacked since he was 4 years old, still felt a little embarrassed, though. Sui Zhou didn't release him, of course, continuing to hold him steady. Tang Fan was helpless. It wasn't like he could hop off his back, so he had to go along with him. The other man's back was broad and warm. Regardless of how hard Tang Fan blinked, he ended up not being able to stand his strong drowsiness, and passed out at some unknown point. His sleep was extraordinarily heavy. Let alone thunder and lightning, the Tartars besieging Datong City would likely not even rouse him. When he opened his eyes once more, he saw familiar roof beams overhead. His mind was a little fuzzy. It took him a very long time to realize that this was his room at Datong's post house. How long had he slept? He rubbed his stomach. It hurt a little, which was a symptom of having been hungry for a long time. He then looked himself over. His clothes had since been changed, the inner robes all new. This wasn't that outfit he had been wearing when they had come back. He lifted the blanket to prepare to get out of bed, only to hear a soft knock come from outside. Come in. A post house worker pushed the door open, breaking out into a smile. Oi, Master Tang, you've finally awoken. You slept for a full 2 days. 2 days. Tang Fan was somewhat shocked, immediately recalling something more important. The Tartars came. They did, and the fighting is over. The sound of the melee could shake the sky. We at the inn could hear it, yet it didn't rouse you. This lowly one was shocked. How did the battle go? Tang Fan quickly asked. It was fierce, the worker started, his spit flying all over. They say that when Commandant Wang just ordered for the city gates to be closed and martial law imposed, the Tartars came attacking not long after on their end, not expecting that we would long be prepared. Dark-faced, Tang Fan cut him off. Get to the main point. The worker snapped out of it. Oh, the main point is that we won. Tang Fan took a huge sigh of relief, still a bit too afraid to believe it. He had learned out of Meng Kun's mouth before that the Tartars would be coming prepared this time, and Dian Kun had been appointed as the commander, so he had feared that it wouldn't be so easy to deal with them. Truly. Truly, and it was a big victory. Everybody says that thanks to Commandant Wang's godlike prediction, we were ready ahead of time, else the gates would have all been open and the citizens wouldn't have had time to escape. Purportedly, he also caught that Tartar commander's son. His name is Tur something. Tang Fan's brows raised high, feeling joyful at this great victory. He wanted to go to the commandant estate and ask, but his stomach couldn't hold out and started gurgling. The worker quickly smiled. Look at this memory of mine. The kitchen downstairs has food already made in it. This lowly one will bring you hot water to wash up with, so you can go eat after you're done. Once he freshened up, Tang Fan headed down to the dining hall enthusiastically, then caught sight of a steaming bowl of shrimp congee set upon a table. The soft white congee covered the fresh, tender, pink and white shrimp meat, chopped mushrooms and sausage sprinkled on top of it. Forget about eating it, the smell alone made one's fingers greatly twitch. Next to the shrimp congee was also a stack of dressed cucumber and tofu noodles, both appetizing side dishes. After all the blowing wind, drenching rain, suffering cold, and starvation of the night before, the fresh dishes before his eyes practically seemed to be from a previous generation. Sleeping for 2 full days had made his stomach, deprived of even a grain of rice, issue the harshest of complaints. He automatically gulped. For the first time in his entire life, he sat down and inhaled the food like a hungry tiger pouncing on its meal. It wasn't until half of the congee was swallowed down that he felt his entire being reinvigorate. The supreme joy of being human had to be exactly this. Master Tang sighed like someone with no promising future, smiling at the post house worker. The post house's craftsmanship just gets better and better. Even this congee doesn't taste the same. It had almost caught up with Suizhou's. The worker smiled right back. It's good that you like it? Sir Sui cooked it for you himself. Tang Fan was taken aback. How did he know I was waking up today? He didn't. He cooked all of your meals these past 2 days, so that you could eat them whenever you woke up. Hearing that answer, then looking at the bowl of congee, Master Tang suddenly tasted another, different flavor. It was sweet and sour. After finishing his meal, he went off to the commandant estate. By coincidence, not only Wang Yu was there but Wang Ji and Suizhou, as well. Seeing that Tang Fan had arrived, Wang Ji broke out into a mocking grin. Anyone else would sleep for a day at most, yet you slept for 2 whole days. Even the Tartar siege couldn't wake you up. You sleep better than the pigs. Tang Fan's mouth twitched, thinking to himself, of course I wouldn't be able to keep up with you. You were able to scold someone at the gate after fighting for a whole night. That's some absolutely astounding energy. His eyes inadvertently met Suizhou's. The two watched each other for a short moment, then Master Tang looked away on his own initiative. I heard you all caught Dian Khan's son. Yes, Turbalat. His eldest. Wang Yu was the one to answer him, stroking his beard as he smiled, pride across his whole face. Censor Tang, this is owed to all of you heading for the Weining Sealet to break the White Lotus Society's array, then reporting back in a timely manner. It was only then that the Ming army could cross the Sealet without worry this time, chase them down to Blackrock Cliffs, and achieve great victory. Though we couldn't grab Dian Khan himself, capturing his eldest son alive is fantastic. This official represents the great Ming's officers and Datong's citizens when I say, thank you all. Saying so, he got up and gave Tang Fan a deep bow. Reason told that despite Tang Fan having been dispatched by the court, Wang Yu was higher ranked than him, so there was no need for him to be courteous at all. However, Wang Yu doing such a thing demonstrated that he had a good comprehension of human emotions, making it little wonder as to why someone of Wang Ji's personality could also get along with him. Tang Fan hurriedly stood up to avoid this, cupping his hands with a smile. This humble official does not deserve such, Mr. Commandant. We were doing all we could in the scope of our duties, this praise from you is too much. It had to be said this was a man that differed from men. Wang Yu couldn't help but sigh inwardly, as he was also an imperial ambassador. Take a look at Guo Tang, who only ever weighed down their back legs all day long after coming to Datong, itching for them to be defeated and condemned by the court. Things had not developed in the way he had hoped, though. Instead, Wang Yu and Wang Ji had established a huge merit. Guo Tang had simply taken an absence of illness at the celebration feast, not even showing his face, as he was likely staying in his estate to write memorials, secretly preparing to besmirch them. As for Tang Fan's group, the instant they came, they had been a great help and had even hurried to give an advance warning so that Wang Yu could make full preparations. After it was done, they didn't even take the credit for themselves and being totally humble. What a shame it was that it was the treacherous sort that currently held power in court. Talents like them would often not be reused but be thrown to the side, while more people like Guo Tang would receive promotions. Wang Yu found it beyond lamentable, but he put a smile on his face. There's no need to be modest, Censor Tang. As you were resting in the post house these past 2 days and missed the celebration feast, you'll have to make it up today. Come and have dinner at the Commandant Estate tonight. This official happens to have people preparing a banquet of good food and wine, so you must not refuse. With that much said, Tang Fan couldn't reject this, giving a smile. There's no hurry for the meal. However, is Turbalat still in the city? Wang Yu nodded. I ordered for him to be locked up. It can't be that the Tartars have simply allowed this, making no fuss. The other laughed. How could they have not? He's Dayan Khan's eldest. I've heard that he is courageous and good at fighting, of generally good repute amongst the clan, and always quite popular. Dayan Khan had only gotten away due to the protection of his bodyguards. After getting away from Black Rock Cliffs, he sent messengers over wanting to ransom back Turbalat. Tang Fan was overjoyed. That's great. Li Zilong, the agent behind the demonic fox case, is now the Tartars' state master. You can add him to the conditions of the exchange so that they will deliver the demon to us. Unexpectedly, as soon as he said that, the expressions of everyone present turned a bit unsightly. Being smart, he immediately came to a realization. You already brought that term up. Wang Yu smiled painfully. Yes. We were discussing this right before you arrived. The Tartars relayed news that Li Zilong had used the chaos to flee, his whereabouts unknown. Even they can't find him. What a load of fucking bullshit. Wang Ji slapped the arm of his chair, clearly stifling a stomach full of fire. He colluded with them, helped them set up an array and slaughter the Ming army at the Weining Sealet, and he just runs because he wants to? Are the Tartars all dead? Do they not have a single bit of vigilance? That isn't an impossibility, actually, Sui Zhou said. They wanted to catch you alive then, so they must have had some other plan. After their failure and escape, even if they returned to the Tartars, the latter would not easily let things lie. Furthermore, the Tartars have lost the fight, their forces took a great loss and Turbalat is in our hands, so it will likely be difficult for them to make any sort of large-scale invasion for a few years. In the White Lotus Society's view, the Tartars have lost their worth for right now. That said, as long as Wang Ji thought about how mighty he ordinarily was, yet had been stuck in the Weining Sealet for a whole night, disheveled and pushed to his upper limits, he couldn't swallow down his anger. Wang Yu sighed. This isn't the trickiest part. The Tartars have many Ming soldiers captured, and claim that they will exchange them for Turbalat. Tang Fan was surprised. How did they get Ming soldiers? Generally, whenever the Tartars captured great Ming citizens, they would take them as spoils of war, then divide them up amongst various tribes to be slaves and ordered around for hard labor. As for those strong-bodied Ming soldiers, the Tartars would believe them to be elements of instability and kill them, following the same sort of rapid expansion that the Mongolian cavalry once had. From the soldiers that went to scout the path at the Sealet for 3 times before, Wang Yu answered. They left a bunch of them, not killing them, and now they're offering an exchange. Tang Fan was quiet. He could understand Wang Yu's predicament. When it came to an exchange, Turbalat was quite a valuable political good. Since they capture him, it would be great if they could swap him for Li Zilong. If they couldn't, Wang Yu could escort him back to the capital, which would be a really great, rare victory in the Ming Dynasty. As could be inferred, that would not only have the effect of lifting the spirits of the court, but the common people, too. If they didn't make the exchange, though, the bystanding fox would mourn the rabbit's death, the army's morale was bound to go cold. Even though Wang Yu might end up electing to exchange them, that didn't hinder him from feeling reluctant and aggrieved, producing an ire that others could grasp. Handing over Ming prisoners of war in exchange for the Khan's eldest son was 100-fold gain for the Tartars. Seeing that everyone seated was quiet, Wang Ji and Wang Yu in particular, and had no joy on their faces about winning the battle, Tang Fan smiled. The old man losing his horse was not necessarily a misfortune. Following this battle, the court will certainly begin the transfer of you two. When you arrive at a new area, you will have a new scene in front of you. His implication being that the two of them would not be remaining in Datong for much longer, so they shouldn't worry about anything too long-term. Taking care of what was in front of them was of utmost importance. Disregarding Wang Ji having always wanted to return to the capital before this, even though Wang Yu wouldn't be returning, the court would request that he switch up defenses, in order to prevent generals on the frontier from amassing followings. This was an old standard. It would have been better if Tang Fan hadn't spoken. As soon as he did, the two Wang's mood sunk even more. No matter what, they had been living here for over 2 years, and taken care of it single-handedly. Would anyone else be willing to work hard to plant trees, cultivate them well, then pass them off to someone else for no reason? The issue of Turbulat's exchange was to be set aside for the time being. Given that Wang Yu and Wang Zhi were willing to do the exchange, they would have to draw up a few more conditions to make up for the expense. This had nothing to do with Tang Fan and Sui Zhou. They had come here purely for the case of the Weining Sealet, being unlike Guo Tang, who was a governor that lived here. Now that the matter was done, they couldn't remain in Datong forever, and had to return to the capital as soon as time would allow, lest people start to gossip. That very night, Wang Yu did indeed set up a lavish banquet to specially celebrate the merits of Tang Fan, Sui Zhou, and the rest of them, as an indirect way of seeing them off. End chapter. The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 102. Rumors about Master Tang. On an occasion like this, not inviting Guo Tang would be much too unreasonable. Who let him be Datong's governor? This position that did not a thing from start to finish yet still got to sit and enjoy the labor of others by taking a portion of the victory fruit, was within its rights to sit at the banquet. However, Wang Zhi was not giving him any face at all. During the meal, he shifted the full sum of his sullenness at not being able to catch Li Zilong onto Guo Tang, aiming a few jokes of ill intent at him until his face flushed from the ridicule and being put on the spot. Not only that, but he summoned a beautiful maid to serve him wine. She had nothing else to do but to specially poured Governor Guo alcohol, making him so drunk that he was helpless, knowing nothing of anything. Tang Fan had no idea how to react to these tricks of Wang Zhi's that he was witnessing, but he knew that the other wasn't solely venting his anger. Behind his seemingly impulsive acts, he had a different goal. Firstly, due to Consort Wan, he had been classified as a figure on the fringe of the Wan party even though he had never made a clear-cut stance of being on it. He had simply always had his own standpoint, where it would be impossible for him to ever listen to the Wan party like Shang Ming did. As a consequence of his secret help for the crowned prince, the Wan party had removed its support to him, even sending Guo Tang to trip him up in Datong. That had annoyed him, his attitude towards Guo Tang actually displaying his attitude of completely separating himself from the Wan party. From this point on, the two would be strangers on different paths. Secondly, regardless of how incompetent the emperor was at doing things, as a ruler, he definitely wouldn't like for his subjects to all group up and start colluding with each other against him. For example, he did everything Consort Wan said, yet had still removed her little brother from his post for a set amount of time as a warning those two sides were not contradictory. For that reason, Wang Zhi's posturing was for the emperor to see. Wang Zhi was in disharmony with the Wan party, the two sides complaining about each other. Not only would the emperor not be vexed, he would be glad. As for who the emperor would end up leaning towards, that would depend on whose heinous accusations could reach a higher level. As it went, of the 8 immortals crossing the sea, each clearly had remarkable powers, all doing their best. Thirdly, since Wang Zhi was inclined towards the crowned prince, he ought to show off his sincerity. His hostilities with Guo Tang, despite being in the far-off Datong, would soon reach the capital, then the ears of the crowned prince. More importantly, Wang Yu and Wang Zhi had established great merits, and those of great achievements easily encounter jealousy. Exposing some weak points at opportune times would make others feel a bit more at ease. Thus, eunuch Wang's recklessness and arrogance that was to the point of wantonness was to be disregarded. When mingling within bureaucracy, every move and act had a deeper meaning to it. If one couldn't see and comprehend it, then they would meet their doom very quickly, either being taken as a stepping stone and trampled to death, or remaining in place for all their lives. Thankfully, Tang Fan didn't need to worry about that. To him, Guo Tang's reputation and that pretty maid were inferior in attraction to these dishes that filled the table. 6. Mariko, Jin Yu Man Tang, auspicious Ruyi, abundance through the years, promotion by fortune. For the sake of gaining a good message, Wang Yu had specifically ordered people to pick out nice-sounding names for these. The 6. Mariko were braised lion head meatballs. The Jin Yu Man Tang were tricolor egg rolls. Within auspicious Ruyi, the ji and chicken were homophonic. After the chicken had been cooked to complete tenderness, the bones were removed and the meat were shredded and then mixed with jula and cucumber to make a cold dish. Abundance through the years was one massive perch. After being cooked by steam, it had been sprinkled with scallion oil sauce to bring the umami flavor of the fish to its pinnacle. Promotion by fortune was a cake typically eaten by civilians on New Year, but for a feast at the Commandant estate, they had been made more exquisitely and deliciously. There were also various other sorts of soups and river fish that didn't need to be gone through individually. With this feast, Tang Fan and Sui Zhou's emotions would likely be at their most relaxed, eating their fills without worry, though, Sui Zhou didn't have such a profound obsession with delicacies, so it was ultimately a boon for Tang Fan alone. After the meal, Wang Yu ordered for the completely inebriated Guo Tang to be taken back to his own estate. Tang Fan and Sui Zhou got up to bid farewell, expressing that they had to go back to the inn, get their things together, and prepare to go back to the capital for imperial audience. Wang Yu understood as much, so he didn't try to make them stay longer, personally seeing them off at the entrance. Wang Zhi left together with them. Tang Fan saw that he barely wore any smile, and simply took it as him being mad over what had happened with Li Zilong. Li Zilong escaped one catastrophe, so his life shouldn't be gone yet. With this great victory, the court will certainly not place more blame onto you, he soothed. The other just shook his head. That's not what I'm thinking about. Tang Fan raised a brow. Then what it is? I previously presented memorials announcing illness and requesting to return to the capital, but they were rejected several times with orders that I remain garrisoned in Datong. When I present another memorial this time, I'm afraid that His Majesty will reject it again. He should agree to let you return after such a huge success, Tang Fan answered, confused. His meaning wasn't that the emperor would cherish his hard work enough to let him come back, but that if Wang Zhi didn't return with his high merits, the court would worry about him sitting too high. Wang Zhi's face was overcast. Don't you understand how the Wan party is? It isn't whether His Majesty agrees or not, it's that they'll definitely think of a way to keep me away from both Datong and the capital. They might even send me straight to Nanjing for retirement. His Majesty's ears are soft, if they puff on them, he'll likely nod his head. Tang Fan pondered for a bit. It's actually not that hard, if you want to return. Wang Zhi, having followed him all this way, had been precisely to ask him about ideas, so he grew excited at that. You have a solution. I'll ask you this, did all of your last few memorials state your ill health? Wang Zhi rolled his eyes. It was more than ill health. I jinxed myself on being near death, and His Majesty still didn't agree to let me go back. Then, did you ever say that you were willing to lay down your post to serve His Majesty and the consort? The other was caught off guard. I never did. How could a strong man go a day without being in power? If the emperor took him seriously and actually sank his post down to the bottom, where would he go off to weep to? Tang Fan shook his head. His Majesty has a soft heart, but it isn't a soft heart that's without a bottom line. You need to have grounds that can actually move him. Now that the Western Depot has long been closed down, even if you don't say as much, after you return to the capital, why the need to bother with starting business back up there? You've grown up in the palace since your childhood, it's your home. Even if the Wan party is being an obstruction, they can't make you beg for your own carcass to be taken back to your home, can they? Wang Zhi snorted. This was one a sarcastic guy. Beg for your own carcass in conventional words, was to return home for retirement. Tang Fan was actually right. Were it said that the palace was Wang Zhi's home, how could the emperor still disagree? This seemed to be doable actually. There's still another issue. If they use my health as an excuse to send me to Nanjing for recovery, what should I do? He asked again. You're clearly suffering from very serious joint pain, Tang Fan answered casually. Doctors say that this sort of ailment needs to avoid long periods of time in damp and cold areas. The south is damper than the north, why would it be suitable for your recovery? Great. Really, this was great. Wang Zhi couldn't help but want to give him a big thumbs up, but he thought that it wouldn't be too appropriate, holding up his aloof airs. Tang Fan, I acknowledge you as a friend. The other laughed. That's a bit heartbreaking, eunuch Wang. I thought we've been friends this whole time. One-sided ties and bare minimum acquaintances are both considered friends, too, Wang Zhi sneered. It's getting late, we should get back, Suizhou suddenly spoke. I had the post house people cook lotus seed mung bean soup. If we get back earlier, you can have some. It won't be any good later. Despite having recently eaten his fill, once he heard that there was sweet soup to be had, he automatically said, let's head back quickly then. This is my farewell, eunuch Wang. With that, he cupped his hands towards Wang Zhi, then dragged Suizhou off without delay. Wang Zhi had no time to respond, blankly watching them leave. In truth, Suizhou was displeased at heart. Why would I tolerate you nitpicking the one who was mine? Those words would not be said to outsiders, of course. A dozen or so days later, when Lu Yan's injuries were good enough to let him ride a carriage, Tang Fan's group officially set off for the capital. Compared to when they had arrived, they do not have a Wei Shan, but they gained a Du Gui'er. During Lu Yan's recovery period in Zhongjing Hall, he had developed a mutual affection for Du Gui'er, who had helped to look after him. On that heart-pounding night, it was not just one's tenacity that was tested by their heart as well. Du Gui'er hadn't been with Lu Yan at the time, but she had learned from the mouths of others that he had been injured in order to protect his colleague, only for Wei Shan to unfortunately die at the hands of Li Zilong, who had been disguised as Chui Unqi. Lu Yan had ultimately failed to save his friend's life. Even so, Du Gui'er held some good feelings for his loyalty. Combined with him recuperating in Zhongjing Hall, their long days of getting to know each other caused her to regard his moral character all the more highly. To be exact, the previous good feelings she had displayed towards Suizhou had merely been a type of admiration towards someone strong. Compared to him, Lu Yan's steadfastness and consideration made her genuinely realize what she needed the most. Dr. Du had been deathly worried about his daughter's marriage prospects, nearly believing that she would never get married for all her life, yet Lu Yan had suddenly fallen down from the heavens, who she happened to take a liking to. Also seeing that Lu Yan was of good character, and learning that he wasn't from a military household but a well-off one in the capital, Dr. Du had quickly consented to their marriage. As the Du family only had 2 daughters, Lu Yan had even promised that the first child they had would have the surname Du, which had made the doctor ecstatic. What was baffling was that, in order to avoid complications from prolonging things, he had made what was supposed to be a long affair very short, determining the marriage in half a month with all the velocity of a flame. Tang Fan and Suizhou, in the capacities as matchmaker and superior, had even attended the wedding ceremony. Hence was why Du Gui'er was coming back to the capital with them. As a new lady of the Lu household, she would have to pay respects to Lu Yan's parents. It was not exactly clear on whether those parents would be over the moon, or more shocked than happy about their son going out and bringing a wife back. After several months of separation, the capital was the same, unchanged by anyone's departure or existence. To speak in a way that was a great faux pas, even if the emperor himself perished, the commoners would wear mourning clothes for 3 months at most and then would continue living their lives how they ought to live them. Since Wang Zhi and Wang Yu still needed to handle post-battle matters in Datong, they would be coming back later and not with Tang Fan's group this time around. What was most important was that eunuch Wang's memorial for returning to the capital for retirement needed to be passed on via Tang Fan's group, because if it went through the regular process, it would likely never reach the emperor's end. The process of their imperial audience was nothing notable. Tang Fan's group had handled its assignment properly and without flaws. The Wan party could, at the very most, only pour some dirty water on them regarding Li Zilong's escape, but there was no way they could deny their credits in helping to solving the pending Weining Sealet case and report back ahead of time. When it came to Li Zilong, Tang Fan's group naturally had something to say, too. The man had clearly been sentenced to death by both the Emperor's brush and the Ministry of Justice's documents. That an imperial prisoner like him could escape from right under the court's nose held a huge implication. Didn't that mean that there was a spy in the court that had passed messages to Li Zilong, and even helped him escape? If they wanted a strict investigation, that would start off from the origins. Considering that would be a huge loss even if they won it, the Wan party had no choice but to abandon the inquiry, put away their battle flags, and not even obstruct Wang Zhi's request to return to the capital. Meanwhile, Wang Zhi's memorial, which was written as per Tang Fan's suggestion, indeed moved the emperor. He did not only agree to let Wang Zhi come back but reinstated his position as the brush holder eunuch of the supervisory of royal steeds. That was all a story for later. Tang Fan and Suizhou, owing to their phenomenal performance, were bestowed with gold, silver, and silks, as well as allowed to recuperate for a few days before returning to their duties at their bureaus. After the fact, Tang Fan's same-year friends privately felt no lack of injustice for him. Thinking about how hard he had toiled, and how he had nearly lost his life, yet had received no promotion, they believed it to not have been worth it. Tang Fan, conversely, understood that despite promotion being good, it wasn't like one could get promoted just because they wanted to be. There was only one daikon per pit. For a promotion, someone else would have to make way and leave their post. In any case, Tang Fan had been promoted fast enough as it was. Amongst palace honorates of his same branch and age group, there were those that were like him, young in age and with true fourth-rank posts, but they weren't too many. His career path could be said to be worthy of pride. The Wan party hadn't gone looking to make trouble for him thus far, so he should go thank the heavens and the earth and burn incense in worship to the Buddha. Wanting to be promoted would purely be a search for death, so it was way better than all else to just relax a little. What ought to be yours would sooner or later come to you. What ought not would be pointless to force. The days following their return to the capital, in Tang Fan's opinion, were relatively tranquil and easy. He was finally able to resume his standard official job again. Then, when he got off work every day, he could return home to play with his nephew, make his sister laugh, eat snacks with Adong. In a life like that, there was simply nothing else to look for. Well, of course, if Suizhou could quit staring at him with a deeply meaningful gaze all the time, Master Tang would feel a lot more comfortable. The other's feelings had already been made very clear. What needed to be said had been said in Datong, and what needed to be done had been done back at the Weining Sealet. Even with how bright and quick-witted a person Tang Fan was, he didn't have a good grasp on things like this, and was unsure of how to react. To say that he was revolted wasn't right. At the very least, after that night, he still held no disgust for Suizhou. But making Master Tang confess that he liked him, and terribly so, was not happening. Bluntly speaking, he was happy with the way things were, and wanted no change whatsoever. See, everyone was already great friends, why the need to ask for things to go a step forward? Would everything be like it always was after the change? To comprehend this event, the ever-simple Master Tang suffered an unprecedented session of insomnia, only to wake up the very next day as active as ever, interacting with Suizhou like nothing had happened. Him getting over it made Commander Sui quite helpless. Alas, when faced with Master Tang's personality, where he would pull the blanket over his head if the sky was falling down, this could not be rushed. It was good that Suizhou had long grown accustomed to how he was. After finding that his method of slowly cooking a frog in warm water wasn't working, he decided to switch tactics. As for what tactic that was, he was keeping it a secret for now. There would conceivably come a day where Tang Fan finally wouldn't be able to escape. On a different topic, ever since He Cheng had moved to the capital with his mother, he grew livelier by the day. By the time Tang Fan had returned to Datong and seen his nephew once more, He Cheng was no different from typical children. His melancholy and calmness of the past had decreased by a lot, and he would even go with Dong to climb trees. Of course, in order to raise a well-bred young lady that at least had an outward appearance capable of fooling outsiders lest she never be able to find a husband, Dong would get dejectedly pulled down off the tree by Tang Fan grabbing her ear. Still, as his uncle, Tang Fan was extremely happy about the heartening changes that He Cheng had gone through. He Cheng aside, even his sister Tang Yu had shed the solemnness she had had in the He household, restored to how she had been back when she was still unmarried. No one in this world wanted to wear a mask all their lives. It was only due to extenuating circumstances that one would have to forcefully change their temperaments to adapt to their situation. There were millions of women just like her and she was not the most tragic one around, but they might not have a little brother like Tang Fan that would be willing and able to help her. That was why she felt herself quite fortunate. However, after Tang Fan's return, he learned from Dong that during the time they had all been away, his brother-in-law had come over from Xianghe County, sought out the Tang house, and personally came to the door in want to take his wife and son back. In the end, despite their separation of households, she was still nominally a woman of the He family, and her name was recorded in their ancestral register. He Lin's demand was completely within bounds. Tang Yu had refused, of course, and even He Cheng had rejected going back with his father. Shamed into anger, He Lin had nearly made the servants accompanying him straight up grab them and take them away. This had been followed by Dong charging out, the little lady alone against a bigger enemy. She had taken up the long sword Sui Zhou once crafted for her, then beaten up the He people until they had fled in defeat. From Tang Fan's understanding of He Lin, someone with an unaffected temperament like him would definitely not have stopped by to pick his family up for no reason. When things went awry, demons must be afoot in order to find out why. He secretly sent people to Xianghe County to investigate. The search indeed yielded a cause. Purportedly, Tang Yu's departure from the He home had already spread around the county. Despite the outside world being told that it had been for recuperation, those with discerning eyes had made out a thing or two, to say nothing of the fact that the He servants had mouths. This had gradually turned into things unpleasant to hear, such as the He families had abused their daughter-in-law until she couldn't take the disgrace anymore, and also that Tang Yu had an affair with an adulterer from the capital, so she had relied on her brother's high official position to discard her husband and run away from home. Rumors were abound. To add a thunderstorm to that snow, the instant Wei Sulhid, the Wei family's financials had plummeted 1,000 zhang. The richest people in the county capital had scattered in the span of a night. Even though this was the Wei's problem, as their in-laws, the He family's reputation had been impacted by no small amount. However, the He household was no upstarts with no strong foundation, and patriarch He wouldn't make his son divorce his wife, as that would only cause everyone to think that the He family were heartless. Before all of this, He Xian had just passed the exam into being a palace honored. Even though he had only been on the tail end of the second roll and not selected to be a Hanlin entrant, he was still an authentic piece, of much more promise than his second brother, He Lin. Patriarch He didn't wish for his youngest son to be like his eldest son, unable to come home for years on end, so he had used some old connections in the capital, and expended no lack of strength and difficulties, to get He Xian into the Ministry of Justice's Records Center, becoming a minor, true 8th rank archivist. For the sake of the He family's reputation and for his youngest's future career, Patriarch He had made a major decision: the family would move to the capital. Their family had generations of officials, and Xianghe County was not that far from the capital, but they weren't native of the capital. Despite them being well known in Xianghe County, they really wouldn't be much in the capital area. When He Xian entered the 6 ministries, for example, he would inevitably have times where he would need help. Patriarch He's old colleagues were only connected to him by old experiences, after all. Every once in a while, they could be asked for a favor, but that already relied on their particular nostalgic feelings. Expecting others to constantly look after him was a complete impossibility. Speaking of which, the Tangs were the He family's proper in-laws, but due to the fight between He Lin and his wife, the fuss made Patriarch He want to go find Tang Fan, but he couldn't set down his old dignity. On top of that, Tang Fan had previously been assigned to the Ministry of Justice. When it came to looking out for someone, where could a closer relationship be than that? Regardless of how it was said, this pot had been stirred up by He Lin, so this matter had to start from the third son of the He family, He Xian. After he entered the Ministry of Justice, he had realized that Tang Fan's capabilities were far greater than he had imagined. As his superiors and colleagues had said, when Tang Fan had been in the Ministry of Justice and taken up a 5th-rank chief position, he had dared to openly lock horns with the left Assistant Minister of Justice. The two had fought like mad, and in the end, Tang Fan had been admittedly dismissed from his post, but that hugely influential assistant minister hadn't received any benefits either and soon got sent abroad to Nanjing to chew on grass. Then, the other implicated party had quickly reclaimed his official's post after a brief time span, and not only that, he had been promoted a grade. How much ability was needed for that? A 5th-rank chief had dared to go against a 3rd-rank assistant minister. Either the man's brain was soggy, or his backer was too great for him to place importance on that assistant minister. He Xian had interacted with Tang Fan before. Someone that had been wise enough to solve the Wei resident's case certainly didn't have soggy brain, so the only possibility was that Tang Fan had a strong supporter. Even though the man was no longer in the Ministry of Justice, he had become something of a legendary figure there. Anyone that had witnessed the storm themselves would get a complicated expression upon hearing his name. Outsiders didn't know that He Lin and Tang Yu were in disharmony, only knowing that He Xian and Tang Fan were in-laws. On that layer of relation alone, they were a bit polite to him, no one daring to bully him for right now despite him being a newcomer. He had been bewildered at the onset, placed inside cloudy mist. After gradually coming to comprehend these connections, he had gotten the mind to ask around. These inquiries had caused him to suck in a cold breath. As it turned out, Tang Fan was currently posted in the inspectorate, the right censor being his mentor. That Jinyue commander of the Northern Administrative Court Division that had accompanied him to Xianghe was his best friend. The recently transferred Right Assistant Minister of Rights, Pan Bin, was a disciple brother of his. Rumors were abound that the former Western Depot director of brilliant and vicious repute, and current brush holder eunuch of the Supervisory of Royal Steeds, Wang Ji, had a fateful friendship with him. The group of his same-year friends didn't need to be brought up, either. That was a huge amount of influence. No wonder he hadn't been shaken at all by that one left assistant minister. It must be said that the strength of rumors was immense, and time could bury facts all the more. Liang Wenhua ending up being deported to Nanjing had actually been an event done during the process of the contest between the crowned prince and the Wan parties, the latter of which had elected to abandon him. It wasn't much like how bystanders imagined, where Tang Fan had exercised tremendous power. Still, everyone that was fond of reading commoner novels were always happy to believe in the exaggerated portions. He Xian, who didn't know the truth, was no exception. He had quickly conferred what he had found out in detail to Patriarch He. Before this, perhaps, the He family would have inevitably grumbled to themselves that Tang Fan had caused problems over nothing, provoking this crisis of familial disharmony. He Xian had also been angry and dissatisfied with Tang Fan over what had happened with his wife's birth family, but after all this, the He family had realized that if they wanted to settle in nicely in the capital, they needed to forge a good relationship with Tang Fan. Back in Xianghe, what all of their eyes hadn't seen would be put out of mind. Now that they would be at eye level, could they still pretend to not know each other? All else notwithstanding, if Tang Fan ever went out and set word on the wind that he and the He family were at odds, giving his thoughts on them, He Xian's days at the Ministry of Justice would likely not be so great. Now, using the time before they officially moved, Patriarch He had wanted to first send He Lin over to stand up, making him beg for his wife's forgiveness. It would be best for the married couple to reconcile, so that no one would feel awkward when meeting from now on, and if the He family ever needed to ask the Tang family for help, it wouldn't be impossible to ask for it. This was the full story behind He Lin showing up at their door. All it had ended with was He Lin bungling everything, though, chilling the relationship between the two families down to a freezing point once again. End of Arc 7.